Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brief kind of introduction of myself and of the course you'll be taking. Welcome to 630 of MSAI, right? And we're doing generative AI with large language models. Pretty fun stuff. I'm Dr. Alan Dennis. I'll be your instructor for this term. And so not to go into a ton of depth on the course materials, you can read the syllabus as can I. But by the end of this course, you'll be able to understand how LLMs work, and that's important so that you are able to effectively use them and be able to succeed where others might not. That means you'll be able to understand how they work, be able to build applications that are useful using them, and then be able to judge the outcome, the output of those systems, as well as deploy them in a responsible way. Be able to translate those capabilities into real world solutions. By the end of this, we'll have a bit of an understanding around how it's different. And generally speaking, the interface is language, and that's one of the things that's interesting. Yes, there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, that's the case. And we'll go through this concept of a prompt that includes the likely context that is passed off to a model. And then there's various tools and data that are involved, as well as then evaluation of how those things went. Basically, these systems are orchestrated systems. They're like complex systems that we used to build before of tying things together, but with much more interesting components. There's some pretty important things that are be covered as far as things like quality retrieval, tool use, guardrails, evaluation, latency cost, and the importance of human oversight. And so this moves past what can a model do to what can a system do. And this is good about building on some of the foundations that are necessary to understand this, as well as the architecture of how these things kind of fit together, as well as being able to do things like text generation, handle multimodal sort of approaches to things. And that's where you've got things coming at you in a world of video, audio, and images, and so on, that are oftentimes quite different, that we want to make sense of all at once. And then be able to talk about things like bias and ethics and safety, so that we're being responsible with our usage, as well as how we might use these things. And we go through some foundations, going over a bit of kind of the internals of how these things work, a bit of statistics, a bit of large language sort of work. In order to do large language models, you understand how neural networks work, and how we use transformers to do some pretty amazing stuff. What is a token and what's an embedding? Those sort of key words to understand. Then move into things like generation, being able to extend our capabilities through giving them some tools and some well-known patterns, such as retrieval augmented generation, which is probably one of the most popular and useful business solutions of generative solutions out there. And then talk a bit about evaluation, quality, robustness, things like cost, bias, and safety. And then talk a bit about application, how we use these things. We'll go through kind of one sort of what an LLM is in one slide, and that's taking text, turning it into tokens, turning tokens to embeddings, running those embeddings through transformers, and then using that concept to be able to predict the next token to generate. So pretty cool stuff. And then go through some of the processes of how these things become an assistant. So talk about things like what is pre-training, instruction, fine-tuning, and tuning, as well as aligning things, as well, and then lastly inference, being able to do things like add prompts, retrieval, do tools, and so on. And we move to the point where prompting becomes context engineering, and context is what's essential with these models, and we'll see that as we move along. The text generation is a way of basically going through and saying what you would like, and defining it very carefully, and then having it created, and then generally iterate on it. And that's the key piece. It's not a one-time thing and you're done. It's an iterative process. And when we talk about generating things, it's not just generating text, although that's one that's quite popular, as well as images, but also audio, music, sounds, and so on, speech, as well as video. The various patterns that you'll see are a mixture of things like chatbots, where you're talking to them to do things, co-pilot sort of things where it's human-led but assisted by an agent or an LLM. And then moving over to generator, and then full-on agentic systems where the model becomes the brain. So the LLM serves as the central point to the things that are being done. Then we talk about the responsible use of these things. Talk about bias and privacy, and making sure that we understand IP and where did this stuff that we're using come from, so that you know how much you can trust and rely on it, as well as should you be using it. And then being able to do things like start from the beginning of a frame, build a prototype, make sure we understand some ground, which is around truth and context, and then be able to evaluate, determine how well things are doing, make it better. These things are almost always iterative in nature. You don't just build one of these systems just as you don't use them in a single pass. Generally, it's not built in a single pass either. Then you refine them and then defend them, make sure that we don't let people do things they shouldn't do against our systems. And then how you get the most from this course. Do things like read and watch these sort of discussions, as well as lots of other material out there on the topic as well. Take the material from the course and put it into some other tools, summarize the contents of the chapters, and so on, so that you're able to learn from this in different ways. During the test, during the course, test the assumptions in the class. Make sure you understand what's going on, and afterwards see what changed. What does good look like? Make sure that you have conceptual clarity. You understand kind of the design fluency of how we build these things, as well as evaluation discipline. Make sure we know how to test things before we start building them. Otherwise, you're never going to be good, right? You don't know how well you're going to do if you don't have a way of evaluating. And then make sure you do things like responsible judgment, and then transfer this information not only to other models and modalities, but also the learnings from this course can be transferred as well. That's me, Dr. Alan Dennis. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll share my link as well. And welcome to the course. I look forward to our time together.